Hi, everyone. This is our Tell All Tuesday for Tuesday, February 23rd. Boy, this month went zipping by, and I am so excited to have with me my guest today is Sally Rhoads-Heinrich, who is the founder and organizer of Surrogacy in Canada Online. And it's such a privilege to have you here today. So thank you so much, Sally.
Oh, it's great to be here.
So we connected, I think, just through fate. And I saw you either on Twitter or Facebook, and then I reached out to you with all the new happenings that are happening in Canada about the mandate. And we had this lovely conversation, and I was so amazed at your vast knowledge about surrogacy and so touched by your story that I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for you to share, your passion and your dedication to helping people create their families. So I was just hoping that maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your journey. I read your journal. It's just wonderful. So welcome and fill us in.
So I created my website in 2000. So I was a gestational surrogate and carried twins for a couple in Maryland. And I created the website. Originally, it was a blog. My intended mother wanted to be able to log in and view updates on the pregnancy. And also her family members, she had family members all over the world that were able to log in and see updates and ultrasound pictures. So what happened was, in 2000, there wasn't a lot of information online on how to do surrogacy in Canada. So what happened was, annoyance, I always say, I kind of created the website more for information because everyone kept asking, how do you do it? How do you find a clinic? How do you find a lawyer? How do I get started? And then it grew into, can you help me find a surrogate? And that's how the website grew into what it is today.
And you actually transitioned because of the need and the support, and you transitioned to launch the website, but it's a full-time endeavor for you now.
It is.
And you have, other people working with you and staff and coordination, and that you do referrals. So that's amazing. I remember way back when, because I'm a little bit of an old timer too. Not that you are, but way back when it was a challenge for people to get the appropriate and timely information that they were needing.
It was
within their personal experience, and so that is just amazing. So why don't we talk a little bit about your experience as a surrogate, and how did you come together? How did you decide to do that, and how did you find the intended parents?
After I had my son, it was very common to go online to forums for mothers and babies, pregnancy, birth, or all kinds of message boards, and I was on quite a few. And I noticed there was often sections for infertility. And sometimes I would peek in there and just see, what do people talk about? And I was very struck by all the stories of, intended parents or just those struggling to conceive, because I had my son very easily and I couldn't imagine life without him. And I really, really felt very strongly for those who couldn't have children. I couldn't imagine my life not being able to have a family. So I thought right away, I always wanted to be a surrogate. We studied it in law class when I was 15, and I always thought that's something I would love to do if I had the opportunity. So the more I just researched it more and read as much information as I could, and then I went online and I found there was a lot of surrogacy message boards in the US, and that's where I was speaking with many couples. I spoke to about 200 over 6 months. Many of them didn't want to match with me because I was in Canada, but there wasn't a large volume of intended parents in Canada. So it wasn't as easy to match like it is today.
Okay.
There was definitely a demand, but there was a lot of other issues. Like for an American couple to use a Canadian surrogate, it's more complicated legally to get their baby home. So there's passports. So a lot of times they would just match with an American surrogate. So I did match with a couple that I thought was the right fit for me, and we matched September 1999, and we had our first transfer April 2000 in New Jersey, and then I gave birth to their twins in December 2000.
Oh, that's so amazing. It's the calling. You can just feel it when you talk about it, that it was that, God God nudging you and the calling to do that. So you had twins, a girl and a boy, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
She had a really horrible time. It took her 2 months to stim and make eggs. And I remember she started end of February, and it was sometime in April that she had the eggs retrieved, and they ended up with only 4 embryos, and they were very, very horrible quality. And the reproductive endocrinologist said that probably less than 4% chance she'll get pregnant, so they transferred all 4. And so we were very nervous for 2 weeks, hoping that at least one would take, and we were very excited to see it was twins.
That's so amazing. So how did you find the experience while you were pregnant, and then that moment of giving this, such a selfless gift of your body, and then also knowing that you have impacted, these lives of these babies and this family?
I really enjoyed the experience. There was a lot of doctor's visits. The end of the pregnancy was definitely harder than I had anticipated. I didn't realize how difficult a twin pregnancy actually is. And then also with having international intended parents who weren't there. So they never came to any appointments. So they definitely missed out on that. It was also some emotional support that I didn't have. And you don't always anticipate going into this what you're going to need. And I definitely would have liked to have had them there. They were there for 1 ultrasound around 20 weeks.
Okay.
But it would have been nice to have had more involvement with them, but because of distance, it was just too hard. But yeah, the end of the pregnancy was very hard. From about 32 weeks to 37 weeks, you couldn't sleep laying down. It was very difficult to breathe. I was very swollen. I had a lot of edema. And they were born, my doctor induced me at 37 weeks because they were both—
How many weeks?
37 weeks.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
They were both over 7 pounds, so they're very heavy.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is a miracle story. That is just so amazing.
So when intended parents came, they left. I had the C-section at 3 in the morning, and the intended parents arrived at 10 in the morning. And I remember they came into my room, and the babies were in the bassinets, and they were just crying. They just couldn't pick up the babies. She just could not pick up those babies. And I reached over, and I had to physically hand her one of them. And she was just so overcome with emotion and grief, for the baby she's lost. It still, even in that moment, was not real to her.
Right. I can imagine. You just have such a soulful presence to yourself. Over my shoulder is Kuan Yin, and every time I do my Tell All Tuesdays, I have Kuan Yin because she's just the mother energy, and you could just feel that from you. And it just makes sense that you are dedicated to, helping other women experience that feeling.
I think surrogacy is just incredible. It's an absolute miracle. Like, even when the babies were born, they looked just like their parents. It was such a magical experience, especially the embryo transfer. I will never forget the embryo transfer because I had no idea, like just the whole process, like her holding my hand and her crying when they transferred the embryos, and being actually able to see those embryos transferring on the ultrasound screen, and just seeing all that emotion from her. You saw right there, that was where it was all happening, her little babies.
Isn't that
really hit me? Yeah. So everyone always asks, you're going to be an emotional wreck, and it's going to be so hard to give them the babies, but it wasn't at all. It's like when someone drops kids off to your house and they come to pick them up at the end of the day. Bye. I never felt any grief or any emotion, like upset, nothing. It just was it's such an amazing experience. I was so happy to do it. And when they left the hospital room to go to their room, I was very happy that I get a full night's sleep. So it was their turn to be parents.
And so are you still in contact?
Absolutely. So they're going to be 16 this year. I visited them when they were 8 years old. I drove down they're now in Virginia.
Okay.
So I went down to visit them in 2008, and they just saw me. Hi, Sally. It's no big deal, because she's always told them since day one. Every year I've sent them a Christmas gift and a photo of us, and they send photos back to us. So it's kind of like they always knew of Sally in Canada, and I'm just no big deal, really. They were 8 and they could care less. Okay, yeah, this is the lady that sends gifts. That's the person we have to meet.
So down the road, when they're in that part of their journey, they'll feel the magnitude of what you were to them, you know, to the parents.
It's absolutely, it's such an honor to see them growing up. Like every surrogate definitely wants to see, not stay in contact where they're involved. It's nice to have just a little bit of contact, just to see a picture once a year or something on their birthday, just to see that everyone is happy and healthy and doing well. It's just a good feeling knowing that they're okay, because you think about them. And I definitely worry that they're all, the parents and the children, that everyone's happy and healthy.
So how does your intimate, personal, soulful experience, in what ways do you feel that affects your relationships that you have now with people who are just starting off on the journey of creating surrogacy? Because I feel that your wisdom is just like pours out. So that I can't imagine, you know, there's a difference. Maybe the analogy I'll use is this. When I was 22, I opened a preschool. So I had a preschool of 51 children a day, and I loved every one of them like they were mine. And, you know, people would say to me, well, how can you be a preschool teacher and you don't have any children, and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And I was like, well, I still love them. You know, they're still mine, but at 5:30 they go home, kind of what you just said. And it wasn't until after I have children, you know, I was like, oh, now I get what they're talking about, you know, the whole picture. But I feel like your sisterly wisdom must just squeeze through every conversation that you have because of your knowing, because of what you have experienced.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely strive to make sure everyone's fully informed. And I think it's important that the matching happens between all the parties. I definitely stay out of matchmaking. I think that's the most important thing, because this is a lot like dating. I always have a surrogate join, and I kind of think in my head, I think she'd be great with this couple, and I'm always wrong. Consistently, people are not matching with who I thought they would match with. I had a couple last year join British Columbia, and I thought for sure we're going to match with the surrogate we had in British Columbia, or maybe the surrogate in Alberta, but no, they matched with the surrogate all the way out in Nova Scotia, other end of the country. Why? It's always the same. I get that call where they say, you know, I saw so many couples, and, you know, I really thought this was the one, but then this one we spoke on the phone, we were friends. For hours we talked and we laughed. It was like we always knew each other. And I'm always waiting for that call or that email that they say, it just felt like we were just meant to be together. We were meant to find each other. So I always just sit back and just let that magic happen. You definitely, with this process, can't just say this surrogate is going to be selected by this couple and they're going to go forward. There's something else at play with the surrogate having that full choice and who she wants to match with, and also the couple. So the couple, sometimes they will have certain preferences, something they're looking for that we can't explain, because it's like dating. If you go on an online dating site, you just naturally feel a connection with certain pictures, and a little bit of info on somebody, and then with the next, you're just not. And no one can really explain what we're seeing. And I think it's the same with surrogacy. Right.
And so you're holding the space open.
Yes. So sometimes we have surrogates, they definitely want to help a same-sex couple, or they only want to help a couple who's never had a child. And then I had a surrogate a few months ago, she matched with a couple in the US that have 9 children. So they've already they have a blended family, and they have adopted children, and they have children through surrogacy, and she still wanted to match with them. And some surrogates are steadfast, I only want to help someone who's never had a child. So they all have these different preferences. And even when they join, like I've had surrogates join and say, you know, I don't want to help someone who's single, and then they match with someone who's single because they felt the connection during the introductions and the speaking. So I think it's really magical how that works.
It is, isn't it? It's just divine. There's some other force. It's like you're holding space for these people to come together, and then the magic just happens. So talk a little bit, if someone's listening and they're in Canada and they're thinking, you know, I need to look into third party and a different option of creating my family. What would you suggest if they're just learning about you and your offerings and your website?
So the first thing I will tell them is, are they candidates for surrogacy? Because we do have a lot of intended parents that will come to us, or just individuals who actually aren't candidates for surrogacy. Maybe they haven't actually done IVF and they've only done IUI, or I have many people that contact me that haven't done IVF and maybe they should try that avenue because they've only been trying a year. So definitely find out if you are a candidate for surrogacy, you've had years of infertility, or you have some other condition where surrogacy would be warranted because you don't have your uterus.
Okay.
Had cancer treatment and you just can't be pregnant again. The first step is to definitely go to an IVF clinic and get started. Make sure they're a clinic that does do surrogacy if you think that might be the route you're going, because some clinics in Canada don't do surrogacy and you don't want to be there. Ideally, you want to be at a clinic that does do third party at some point. But definitely, we actually recommend to most intended parents that they have embryos ready by the time they join our program, and the majority do. Just because most surrogates that come to us, they want to get the process started immediately. Waiting is not usually the forte with any surrogate. She's usually wanting to get started yesterday, and she doesn't want to wait 3 to 6 months or longer to get this process started, because they already know it's going to take about 3 months with the screening and starting everything. And the other part of it is, in Canada, because it's altruistic, a lot of surrogates with their partner will say, okay, I'll give you 1 year, and then I don't want to hear about surrogacy anymore. So the surrogates are kind of in a rush. They want to match with someone who's got embryos ready to go, and they can get started and get pregnant as soon as possible.
Well, isn't that amazing? Because within my clientele too, my coaching clientele, there's a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
So they're mirroring the sense of urgency that the intended parent has. That now you have two. Oh, you're the pickle in the middle, because now you have two people with that sense of urgency.
Absolutely. And some intended parents will come to us and they'll say, well, we want to get the surrogate first, and we don't want to get embryos made. But we've seen many issues with that, because a couple will match with a surrogate mother, and the surrogate's waiting, and they take 6 months or longer to choose an egg donor, or they can't decide on an egg donor. Surrogate then changes her mind and she matches with someone else, and then they've lost the surrogate. So this is why we feel it's always best to have embryos ready first, because you can't do anything with a surrogate without embryos.
Correct.
I know it might work a little differently in the US, and I know they advise usually find the surrogate first, but in Canada it's typically the opposite, just because we have such issues with finding surrogates and having a surrogate match with you. It's very slow. You definitely don't want to lose her, because for someone to put their life on hold for 6 months or longer, it's a little too much.
Right. And plus, after that is the pregnancy too. So it's the 6 months and then the 9 months, and then
it's a long time to keep your partner supportive of your decision to be a surrogate, because it means there's no family trips. After 24 weeks, you have to stay in your own province. You can't travel. So it definitely affects their life in quite a way.
And so I remember when we were speaking on the phone about my naive way of looking at the new changes, about the mandated, in United States we call it the mandate, the insurance mandate, the mandated coverage for IVF. In my Pollyanna way, I was thinking, oh, this is wonderful. But then, with your experience and your wisdom, you shared how it is creating a sense of a bottleneck.
It has. In Quebec, they started the free IVF funding, and they definitely were overwhelmed with many people rushing to clinics to get the process started. They have since ceased that program, so it's no longer, I believe they now get a tax rebate or something. I'm not quite clear on how that works. In Ontario, they now are funding IVF cycle. Mm-hmm. It does include intended parents that are using an egg donor or a surrogate if they're residents of Ontario. But again, a lot of intended parents are registering with clinics, a lot of individuals are registering with clinics to get started to do surrogacy. And the other issue is the clinics, it was left up to the clinics to decide who gets the funding and who doesn't. So many individuals or patients are registering with as many clinics as possible, which is making a lot more work for the doctors and the clinics to process all these individuals who are seeing if they get funding. So it's definitely affecting wait times.
Okay. And how much of an increase of a wait time have you seen within your clientele then?
In January, I definitely noticed there was a large volume of intended parents or just individuals looking for information. So it was very busy, and I think it's kind of slowed a little bit. But I think the screening dates for our surrogates went from about 2 weeks to 8 weeks.
Okay. Okay.
That's not as bad as we were anticipating. It's definitely not as bad.
Right, because going back to what we just talked about, that emotional, the emotional charge to, get this process moving and you know, get in the queue, if you would, especially with the changes, you know, that kind of calms down the system a little bit, because I thought you were going to say months. So it was, yeah. So we were chatting before we went live, and we were having a little issue putting up our names and our contact information. So I just wanted to take a little break and have you share with people how they can find you, what's the best way to do that. And I noticed within your site when I was on it, and you know, there's a membership portion, or a portion that you have to sign up to gain access to. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that too.
So our website is Surrogacy in Canada Online. You can find it at www.surrogacy.ca. So there's a contact submission form. You can fill that in for just if you're looking for information. Or we have the application form as well for intended parents. If we receive your intended parent application, it does ask a lot of questions that helps facilitate finding a surrogate and what your situation is, so we can help guide you. But if we receive that, you receive a temporary username and password, so you would be able to log on to the website and see profiles of surrogate mothers and egg donors and also other intended parents. And we like intended parents to have access to the website so they see how it works. They can see the ratio of intended parents to surrogates. Generally in Canada, there's usually 20 to 30 couples and maybe 1 to 5 surrogates. So the ratio is it's not easy to see when you're first looking for a surrogate. It's very overwhelming for most intended parents, but we want to have that transparency so you can see how it all works. We also have it set up that way so surrogate mothers who are thinking of being a surrogate are able to log in and see profiles of all these couples and see their stories, because they're usually hit with, wow, look at all these people that are looking, and they will tell their friends or their family members, and it helps to bring in more surrogate mothers.
I think that's such a powerful way of connecting or having, you know, the word you use is transparency. I did a program in Connecticut, and an IVF nurse, a young IVF nurse, I was actually speaking with her mom, and after doing her residency, after doing her training in reproductive endocrinology, she decided to be a surrogate mom because of just that need. And she was this young girl, you know, she was just graduating, she was turning, you know, maybe 22, and it was that reason why she took the step to become a surrogate, because she was like, I'm overwhelmed with all these women who have this heartache and desire, and there really isn't, you know, at that time, you know, a lot of, you know, options for them. So that is such a powerful way of people understanding, you know, understanding the circumstances.
Almost every surrogate I do a consult with, they all say the same thing. I had no idea there were so many intended parents, and I had no idea it was this easy to be a surrogate. They always have this image in their minds that it's going to be this long, drawn out 6 to 9 months of screening, and then, you know, a couple may contact you or look at they think it's all secretive. And a lot of them have an idea in their head that it's a lot like the Baby Mama movie. I'm not sure if you've seen that, which is like a horrible surrogacy movie, but they often think it's like that, and that they have to go through this agency. But it's different in Canada than the US. So they aren't going through that same process with the big agency and the agency kind of deciding who you're matched with. It's a very, very different environment here in Canada.
Well, I so appreciate
they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, I so appreciate you sharing that, because that's why the Tell All Tuesdays are so important, and I started them because it just shines a little light where it needs to be. And you know, even though we're different nations, we're still so close. and I think it's just so important. I also noticed that on your website you do have referrals to clinics, and you do have referrals to lawyers, you know, surrogacy lawyers. So how does that work for an intended parent and a surrogate?
In Canada, surrogacy consultants, we operate in a gray zone. So our legislation, you're not allowed to be paid for matching. So all our services are allowed to do is provide information, referral, and support. But we do have matches happening in our organization. But again, we don't have a hand in that. The surrogates and intended parents are communicating between each other, and then they would let us know if they've matched. So there are many individuals in Canada that are finding surrogates on their own, mostly because it's a friend or a family member.
Right.
A lot of family or surrogacy going on, and they come to us, and obviously we don't expect them to join, but we want them to have the resources and information they need. So they may need information on where closest clinic, what lawyer. We want them to make sure they have all those resources, because our site was nonprofit from 2000 until 2010.
Okay.
Actually, all that information was always on there free, and it's continued to be on there for them.
That's such a selfless. I know how much effort it takes just to keep everything timely and fresh, and sharing that. And I understand that, because this offering also is a compliment, and it's just because there's holes, and the information has to be in an integrity, given in integrity. So that's why I so appreciate your time and your sharing this. So I saw that a lot of people are answering, asking questions, but if you're one of those people who put a question in the queue, we'll send those off to Sally, and then we can, address them through private messaging or a different manner. But I just want to make sure we say again how people find you.
Oh, you can find me through the website Surrogacy Online, www.surrogacy.ca. We also have a Facebook page, Surrogacy and Care Online, great page to follow if you're looking for all our updates and birth announcements and any information related to surrogacy in Canada.
So I always close with, what I know now that I wish I knew then, and so what would be like that one little pearl of wisdom that you could share either to an intended parent or someone who's contemplating surrogacy? What is that just one little, peace of mind tidbit?
Definitely keep faith. I always say to every client in our program, you have to keep faith and you have to keep positive. Once you've lost that, it's almost like the surrogates pick up on it. And once you start getting very negative, I've had issues where intended parents will say, no surrogate picks us, and they become very negative, and the surrogates see that. It's very important. I had a couple just last week, they waited 15 months and they just matched. And that's really, really hard for them, because they had to talk over 100 surrogates who told them no. And they still kept positive, and they kept faith, and they matched. Less than 2% of couples in our program are not matched after 2 years. So I think it's pretty good. Almost everyone's going through without any issue. But you definitely have to keep positive that it will happen for you, because that resonates with the surrogate mothers.
Well, it's the energy of it, isn't it? It's the balance between just keep going and the persistence, and how I call that moment the gulp. When you get into the gulp and you're like, oh gosh, just it's almost, there's no strength to go forward. It's that, holding the hope. And I just admire your offering, because I feel like that's what you do. You're the hope holder, you're the vessel for the hope. And that was just a perfect last comment. So thank you so much. And we'll have this Tell All Tuesday has been a private view for just now, but going forward in a couple days, it'll be live on YouTube, and we'll repost it. And if it's okay with you, I'll post it on your Facebook page, or
absolutely,
so that you could do that, and then share your website over and over again. So thank you so much. It was such a privilege and a pleasure to spend this time with you, and you'll be hearing from me.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you, Sally. Bye-bye, hon.
Bye.